We also want to introduce a longtime supporter of the Ask Sean show and technical expert who's always firing away great info in the chat. Tom Cabot is joining us today. He's a trained energy engineer. I didn't know that was going to be difficult to say, energy engineer, and has 30 years of experience working with utility programs and the city of Palo Alto. And he's going to be handling one of our case studies tonight. So, but first, let's take it away with our first completed case study. Marnie reached out to us, and you guys are in, I believe, Menlo Park area. Is that correct?
Mountain View, yes.
Mountain View, I'm sorry. Yes, you did say Mountain View. So Gary, why don't I hand it over to you so you can just tell me when to move the slide, and I'll change the slide, and you can share kind of what you did, why you did it, what you went through.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Gary, and this is my wife, Marnie. We, over the summer, did an electrification project on our home. It's a two-story house in Mountain View. We had already had rooftop solar and EV chargers, but we had a number of gas-based appliances. And a big part of our goal for this was to cut the cord completely on natural gas, aka methane, so that we could do our part to make the shift to electrified home environment. We also got a number of useful fringe benefits out of it that might be useful to some people. So we have an upstairs and a downstairs, and we'd had difficulty getting those two different zones temperature controlled effectively. We also had through converting to electric only, we improved the overall air quality in the house, and since we have rooftop solar again, it allowed us to get to a place where progressively more of our CO2 footprint is eliminated. We had a fantastic contractor named Dan at Emerald Eco, and she helped us work through the project and did some option research for us. We weren't in a particular rush, although I find that a lot of people, they'll have like an outage in their furnace, and then they'll try to decide whether that's the right time to make their change. But we did it in a more planful and proactive fashion, so we didn't have to do it in a rush.
And I hope you'll share some of that contact information in the chat later after you're done presenting, because finding good contractors is a real challenge for everybody. And did you have to kind of say, hey, this is the route I want to go? Or did the contractor already get that?
Our contractor is very much in line with electrification goals and projects, and had done a number of similar projects throughout the San Francisco Bay Area.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So when we first looked up the Silicon Valley Clean Energy website and contacted a number of contractors, we didn't actually get a lot of response back. So it took a lot of wrangling, and we talked to a number of contractors, but we picked Emerald Eco, but it wasn't an easy process.
Right.
Everybody had different take on things, and some contractors are very specific. They only do Mitsubishi, and that's their solution. And so everybody was telling us different things, and it was a bit confusing. But when we met our final contractor, we felt like they were able to listen and have discussion, and they also do quality work. So it did take a lot of time to figure out what contractor to use.
Yeah, it is. It's an important area. And that's why we're doing this show, is to try to help more people know what to ask for, and how long it's going to take, what the different types of equipment and appliances. But keep going, Gary. Tell me what some of the efficiencies you've seen.
So shall we flip through the slides and we'll walk through some pictures of our project?
Yeah, I want to add that our contractor actually initially didn't want to take our project because of the city we live in. She had done a project here, and she found that the city permitting process was so onerous, and they favor gas, that they don't understand how electrification works, that they refuse to do anymore in Mountain View. But I talked her through, and we like each other, and I told her that I'm an ambassador for electrification too, and I'm really active in this area, and I know the the sustainability office. So I'm going to talk to them. And so apparently connecting these two groups got a chain of 20 CC, 20 people or CC in the city departments trying to like brainstorm what's wrong with the process. And I think that really helped, although in the end, I think we still had some of the issues, but I was very proud that we managed to use our project to get the city to start thinking about how to like improve their permitting, which was like the big problem she faced in the past.
Wow, that's a big deal. And so you're an ambassador with the Switches On program?
I was, yes.
You were, okay, that's great. And that's a great resource. Maybe Linda or somebody can put it in the chat because I can't add any things in the chat when I'm sharing the screen. But that's another resource, and we're happy to connect you with, ambassadors and resources in your area too. Okay, here we are. We're at heat pump and water heater.
Number 2.
So
If
we
you currently have
going,
health coverage from an employer or union, joining welfare could affect your employer or.
So we ended up going with a Daikin heat pump, and this particular heat pump was useful for us in our particular setup because we could have one external device, one external coil that would run coolant lines into 2 separate zones and have a heat exchanger in 2 zones. There's something like a small constraint around this, which is that the external unit can either be in heating mode or cooling mode. And so we can't have, one zone heating and the other zone cooling, but like in our environment, like we never really have circumstances where that really matters to us. And on the right, you can see we ended up going with the Sanco water heater. This is the external unit for that. We found that Sanco and Daikin were a little bit more on the pricey end of the options, but we picked them because of primarily because the 2-zone feature of the Daikin together with the reliability guarantees that Sanco one seemed to have against some of their competition. Next slide.
Yeah, great. I do want to mention we are recording this show. I saw a couple people have to leave at 6, and I hope that we'll be able to get that posted on the Redwood Energy site real soon. Go ahead.
So this is the interior. So if you look at this closet, this is actually inside of the house, not in the garage. And so in our particular environment, since the airspace here is more shared with the kitchen, not having methane and some of the burning byproducts kind of in the vicinity of our dwelling space was actually more important than it may be in some people's environments. Next slide. And we had also done, as we moved into this house, we had made a point of setting up electric appliances rather than gas appliances. And then as part of the same project, we ended up having an induction cooktop installed. The induction cooktops end up being, again, like a little bit more expensive, but the can you say a little bit about why you like the cooktop induction?
Yes, I want to hear. I was just going to ask.
It's really great for cooking. The main thing is that it's easy to clean and it heats really well. So before I upgraded to the cooktop, actually I wanted to do electric. So I was doing this combination of using the electric kettle and Instant Pot to boil the water before I transfer it to the gas top to do the rest of the steps. So it makes me happy that we can do it all at once. And I guess we just looked at whatever is available and what is on sale and meets our feature needs. There isn't too much science to picking the cooktop, I think.
So as we mentioned a little bit ago, you actually have to do some pre-work around these. So we had to have a dedicated 50 amp circuit installed for this, and we had to have some wiring upgrades necessary for doing the heater and the water heater. And so if you're trying to do this project while you had an outage, like your heater breaks and you look at that as the opportunity to do the upgrade, it ends up being something where you might end up being out of service of important household appliances for weeks or months. And so I think this is the type of project you really want to do planfully rather than in a reactive fashion.
Right. And I do want to share that we did have an issue with that. And so we just got some induction cooktops in the meantime while we were waiting. And we could just put them on the counter and we kind of, were able to manage things. And Sean, feel free to jump in at any time. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say those induction cooktops are also really good for testing to see whether your pots and pans are compatible.
That's true. You do. What is it that you need? Do you remember? Is it the aluminum base or what was the?
It needs to be ferrous metal. It needs to have ferrous, meaning like steel or stainless steel has to be a layer of it. And there's no substitute for that. It has to be one of those two metals.
It has to be magnetic. And we found that when you search on Amazon, you just look for induction ready in the description.
It's really easy to find. That's true. And they're completely affordable and easy to clean up and all that kind of good stuff. And I think I saw that we were having a chef that Sean knows had signed up to register to join the show. So I hope you'll identify yourself in the chat. Go ahead. There's your panel. Nice.
The other kind of odd thing about this is that when we had our solar put in, the solar contractor decided to put in kind of several different sub panels in the house. And the contractor had highlighted that we have a bit of a hodgepodge here. And so we were thinking about whether or not we should just clean up the whole panel system, but we opted to not do that extra expense. But the contractor had put in a 200 amp panel here, which is great because we actually have now a lot more electric usage. But they pointed out that we actually only have a 100 amp wire going from our house to the transformer on the electric pole. And that's something that the PG&E is responsible for, and they don't necessarily seem to be particularly motivated to upgrade the wiring. So right now we're kind of like running some risk on potentially overloading the circuits.
I'll put it out there that all electric homes generally peak at 30 amps, and the highest that we've seen is 80 amps. From like a super duper wired house with fast chargers and all the rest of it. So, and that's from thousands and thousands of households have been studying in PG&E territory and Redwood Coast Energy Authority territory and SMUD territory. So it's really unlikely that you're even at 80 amps, which would be safe with a 100 amp panel.
I definitely expect you to be the expert here. With the cooktop saying 50 amps and then the car charger that we have at 40 amps, like if we happen to be running them both at the same time and then a lot of other stuff in the house, maybe that starts to look high, but I think you're right that it's not likely a problem in practice.
If your 50 amp stove, if you were running everything all at once as best you could, that might get you up there. But when you're cooking, instead of using say like 12,000 watts, which is I think what 50 amps is, 14,000 watts, you literally cook on 500 watts. That's a frying pan, like a hot fry. It's 500 to 600 watts. So you're a long ways away from the total rated amperage of the device, which is why the field data shows that all electric homes are not peaking much past 30 amps.
Okay, and we charge at night, so.
Yeah, we charge at night and then cook during the day. So.
Yep.
So you might be peaking at 40, or maybe you're peaking at 50, but you're still, really safe.
Yeah, and one final part of the project, which will take on maybe a few months from now, is to completely remove the gas meter. But since we're not going to move out of the house for a little bit, I'm going to wait until PG&E gets its process a little better, because I've heard that it could be a little bit tricky to get them to, and the people on the phone to understand what you want to do. Because my friend tries to disconnect her gas meter and they're trying to disconnect the whole entire service from the house, and they still need electricity. So it was a very big hassle for her. So we're going to wait a little bit. But we do want to remove our gas meter so that the future owners of this house will find it a lot harder to connect gas appliances.
Excellent. When they remove your gas meter, what they'll do is dig a hole in the street and pinch the line up there and then hot weld it while it's active. They own the gas meter, but they don't own the gas pipe in your yard. so they go out to where they do own it and they crush it and weld it. And yeah, it's not easy to reconnect after that.
So one other small detail is when we finished the city inspection, they sent out an air quality, someone to measure air quality because you're doing an HVAC permit, and so they want to validate the air quality. And he came out, and because it's all electric, there's nothing really to validate. And so it was kind of like a weird experience. And he thanked us for making it easy for him, but like it kind of wasted our scheduling time.
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I've just been seeing more and more articles, and Sean can speak to it, that, gas is like having our own gas plant inside our house, having gas appliances, and that it's one area that's not really regulated. But it has very high pollutants, so it's causing health issues for my daughter, and so that's one of the.
It is like there's an equal amount of gas burned by the gas power plants in California as gas buildings, like buildings burning gas, same amount of gas, but there's 8 times as much pollution from buildings. Yeah, so it's very
and
dirty.
You were comparing it to smoking cigarettes, like.
Oh yeah, that's the bummer. Since 1995, every study has shown that having a gas stove in your house is equal to having a cigarette smoker hanging out in the living room all day. It's just the same amount of health impacts on the rest of the people in the house: asthma, heart attacks, cardiopulmonary disease, medication use. It's kicking the pants.
Yeah. And I think even though it seems like gas prices are maybe lower than electricity, gas is going up exponentially higher. And this is where you can really.
Tristan, because we're going to lose time here, so I just want to keep on pushing through the slides because we have 2 more case studies and we got to get to questions.
And we got to get to questions. I know. And I see Sharon has her hand raised as well. So
yeah, this is a question thing.
Question? Yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about what happens to the gas lines after you're no longer using them. So at this point, I now have several sort of dead vestigial gas lines. I'm about to have another one next week when I replace my gas stove with induction. So how safe is it to leave those lines versus having somebody, paying someone to crawl under the house and remove them? Who exactly do you pay to do that anyway? When the stove installer arrives, they're probably just going to disconnect it and leave it there. You said you had to leave your stove 3 inches away from the wall because of that. So I'm kind of curious how to deal with
it is
the
such a bad
line.
It's bad. Pardon me. It's dangerous to leave gas lines, and not because they're supposed to be empty and they're supposed to be clamped off. But I could give you a long list of stories of people who thought the gas line wasn't, and then their house blew up, including my brother and sister-in-law. Right after they sold their condo, someone upstairs had thought they'd capped the gas line to the former furnace, and they put in a heat pump. But when they turned on their stove, the gas cap up there had popped, and they blew up the entire building. Like, no one can live in this thing because all the fire sprinklers turned on and there was a crater on the side of it. It's just like, so if you can get rid of the gas pipelines, do. That includes underground gas lines. I can give you articles on that people nick them with underground equipment and they blow up because they thought it was disconnected, but it's not. So yeah, I went out there and watched them like cramp that thing and weld it. I know that there's no gas in our pipeline, like it evacuated. But I wouldn't casually leave gas lines in your house when you have an active gas line to your house. That's like literally playing with fire.
Maybe
can I just mention that we've had a question about where the recording will be because someone had to jump off. I don't see it on. We put one on our Climate Reality YouTube. Where are they landing the recordings? Because we're happy to put it there.
Can you take that offline, actually, because I think we're discussing.
It'll just be on Redwood Energy's. That's one place is Redwood.
Oh,
Energy. If you type it into YouTube, Redwood Energy has a huge presence of videos, and we'll pop it up there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and we'll email everybody that RSVP'd to the show too.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll also put it up at Climate Reality. So we'll have 2 spots.
Okay.
So all right, now we're ready to go.
Tristan, there's a birthday, right? That I think that
we did that. Gary, and
no, isn't one of our? Oh, it's Gary. Oh, Gary. Hey, first of all, yay, Gary!
Yeah,
Happy
well,
birthday.
it's actually his daughter.
Oh well, daughter's birthday.
They have to head off because it's their daughter's birthday.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you very much, Gary. I thought it was one of the other ones. I was like, oh, get to that one. It's not 34. Okay.
No,
So
it's
now
all
we're
good.
going to be working on Commander Greg Nelson, right? Is Greg here?
Yes, he is.
Okay, just Greg. I'm retired now, happily.
Hey,
Yay.
so you get the expertise of Tom Cabot here. So Tom, take it away, my friend.
All right, thanks. Hey, let's head to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about Greg's San Pedro home. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,700 square feet. And next, they've already been doing some things like putting solar on the roof, and next, and putting car chargers in the garage and 2 Tesla power walls. You can see the car charger on the left, the power wall batteries on the right, and next.
Oops, sorry.
So they made a big start there. And now the picture on the right is their meter set up. And then I made a little map of it on the left showing that they've got a main meter going to a main panel, and then that white box in the upper right, sophisticated controller for solar and batteries called a gateway, and then below it's a sub panel. And next, they also have a 200 amp panel in service, and with a couple of things in it, mostly going to some sub panels. And next, and I'm going to go pretty quick through the slides. This is their main sub panel. And next, they have you can see they've got a lot of breaker spaces in there, and are using full-sized breakers. Sometimes when things get crowded, we can go from these full-size 1-inch wide breakers to the tandem breakers that get 2 breakers into the space of each inch. And so it's a way to fit more on physically. And so this is their sub panel in the garage, 125 amps, and already feeding things like the car charger and kitchen. And next. So I did some sizing of equipment for them from looking at their gas bill. Up here in PG&E territory, we get some nice daily gas data. And so it makes it really easy for me to see how much energy is being used for different things that are using gas. But here I had to make a couple of quick guesses. Like the summer gas use, you can see at the low part of this graph in the middle of the page, that was about 8 therms per month. Probably 6 of the therms were going to the water heater, the other 2 for cooking and drying. And with 6 therms per month going to the water heater, that's only about 14,000 BTUs per day in the water, making it, say, only about 28 gallons a day of hot water. So a 40 or 50 gallon heater tank is going to be plenty. And then look at January month, Greg was telling me that's when his daughter comes to visit, and she likes to run the temperatures hotter. And so they use 72 therms that month, and 64 of the therms, I would guess, then are for the space heating. The other 8 are for the regular water heating and everything else. With 64 therms in a month, I was guessing probably their peak day is about 4 therms of gas use, and putting that through their furnace at 80% efficiency would deliver 320 kilobtus per day. That's the same as 27 ton hours of energy in HVAC speak. That a ton is 12,000 BTUs. And so if I divide that much energy by about 14 hours, I can tell, oh yeah, a 2-ton heat pump could deliver 28 ton hours in that peak day. And it would only take 14 hours for it to do that. And so that's for me as an engineer advising on a project, I go, oh yeah, that's plenty of heat pump. You know, he doesn't need to go bigger than that. And then if you ever want to get up to speed faster or up to temperature faster, you just start it earlier in the morning with these automated thermostats. And next slide.
I wanted to add that, Greg, what we're seeing here is totally normal. Like this is normal stuff. So what Tom's like your statistics, the size of the water here, these are what just sort of a normal household is using. So
I'm glad my daughter is normal. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean that one
for daughters
a little extreme, but
I can't put it all on her. I have a son in town too on the holidays, so that
Yeah. So Greg provided a bunch of pictures too of his house and some measurements. So he was telling us how big the closet is. You see on the right, and you see that door on the left of the left picture. That's the closet heater door, and you see that top combustion air to do those combustion air safety type. And then
your audio is breaking up. Could you take off your camera just so we can just hear you? I think. I love your hat, but we want to hear you.
All right, and hopefully that's better. And so anyway, this is where a heat pump air handler can go, right where the furnace has been. So just taking out that gray box and going to the next slide, and putting in a new gray box that would be from the mini split heat pump. So that thing on the far right is the outdoor compressor unit of a mini heat pump, and it's a split heat pump, meaning there's an outside unit and an inside unit. And then that kind of thing can be just put in place of the furnace. And Greg and I were talking earlier today, and he's got a brother-in-law who may want to do a do-it-yourself version of this. And so next, let's see if so in the this slide on the left side shows a advertisement for a Mr. Cool do-it-yourself mini split heat pump, 2 to 3 tons for $3,500. And it's got those cool connections that you don't have to have all these special HVAC tools and skills to do, and you don't have to pump all the air out of the line set because it's pre-evacuated and shipped from the factory with a total vacuum in it. And then the refrigerant's in the unit, and you just open a valve and it comes out. The other thing Greg was looking at is part of his house doesn't keep up with the rest. So I showed a little picture here of a $112 duct fan that can go on an 8-inch duct and help push more air towards the room that's being underserved. So those are the kind of things he can do. Next. This is the outside. I think it's kind of near that. There's the, let's see, that closet is the water heater closet.
Oh, Tom, could we go back one slide just to add? Because the do-it-yourself option, the HVAC, one slide back there, that Mr. Cool, I just want to speak in favor also, because if you put in, it's $5,000 a ton when you install a heat pump. So this 2 ton to 3 ton would usually install for $10,000 to $13,000 if you hired someone to do it. If you're doing it yourself, that's $3,500. So that there's just a really dramatic change. And as you're pointing out there, those pre-charged refrigerant lines is the only manufacturer that does this, but they do a good job. That's the difference. And all the pricing is not having a skilled contractor who has to evacuate and do lots of work to get the refrigerant in there. So thanks for letting me interject. I just want to reinforce that Mr. Cool is the one manufacturer who has those do-it-yourself, truly pre-charged refrigerant lines. And it saves, probably 4/5 of the cost, 3/5 of the cost to get to do it yourself.
Oh yeah.
What kind of experience do you need to install it yourself? Like, Greg, how are you taking this on?
I'm sorry, what was could you repeat the question?
I was just saying, what kind of experience do you need to be able to do it yourself? Otherwise I think everybody would be.
Yeah, I couldn't say. I've tried a lot of things, do it yourself, and it usually takes 10 times as long as a professional, but if you have the time.
Yeah, I do these things myself and put in my mini split heat pump, and you just have to treat it like a hobby. And yeah, it's going to take a couple of days of solving the little problems, but it's a fun way to go.
Yeah.
So, next slide. And so that's the outdoor closet, wherein that's the closet open to see the water heater, and that's and one more. Yep. So there's where the water heater is. It's a 40-gallon gas-fired water heater now in a small closet. And the way to put a heat pump water heater in there is, you see the door is open on the left. It is to cut out a much bigger part of the door to become a louvered or screened air breathing doorway to let the cold air out of the closet. Next. And so that's a picture of a 15 amp, 50-gallon heat pump water heater, which also can be self-installed. In this case, you with this one, it's a 240 volt version, but you could also go to Home Depot to the Pro Desk and special order the 120 volt Ream shared circuit model that could go on a regular 120 volt circuit and extend one of those to that closet. So there's a couple of links to look at the equipment there. Next.
Great, Tom. And maybe after you're done, you could share a few of those links in the chat for everyone.
Oh, we'll see if I can. Okay.
No, after you're done presenting, because I can't share any links while I'm sharing the screen. Look at this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's just how it looks inside the closet now. Next. So Greg's also got a gas-fired dryer, and a laundry already has 120 volt outlets for the washer and dryer. So next. That can be replaced. Sean and I each own one of these all-in-one combined washer dryer machines. It's one machine. You put dry, dirty clothes in and you get dry, clean clothes out of it. The same way I treat my dishwasher. I don't have a separate dishwasher, a dish dryer next to my dishwasher that I get all the wet dishes out and move them over. But anyway, this is a kind of a nice way, a great labor saving device, but it plugs right into the regular outlet and frees up about $10,000 worth of floor space. Next.
Yeah, I need that. 'Cause I need some shelves and all that. That'd be great.
Yeah, and then Greg's already gone partially electric in cooking. He's got the gas cooktop there, but you see on the right side, he's got an induction hot plate that he's been using to do most of his cooking. And he was wondering if, it made sense to have a propane burner if you just got to have a flame. So next. I went online and found, hey, for $60 down below, you can get a propane hob and, just switch over to having that little thing for backup when you really need flames on your food. And then I found a lower cost induction cooktop at only $350. So anyway, interesting to shop around a little now and then. Next. And Greg also asked me, well, how much would all this added electric use cost or requiring more solar panels? And so the calculation, you can see it being done there. It's the 240 therms of gas he's using each year times the 80% efficiency. Says it's 192 therms of heat that he's getting out of different uses of gas. And if we divide that by the heat pump coefficient of performance, that COP of 3, it's about 64 therms of electricity. If we think of that, each therm is 100,000 BTUs. We can divide it by 3,400 BTUs in a kilowatt hour. It tells us that's about 1,900 kilowatt hours of electricity. And down looking at how he has to slope his panels at a pretty shallow slope, they only produce about 1,500 kilowatt hours a year. So it would take about 1.25 kilowatts of PV. And that's only about 4 solar panels to produce the annual energy that all this electrification for the 2 heat pumps and the cooking and the drying, all that they would take. And that's it.
Hey, Greg, do you have any questions?
A few, if you don't mind. What is the code on that propane burner? Do you have to run that thing? How far outside of the house do you have to go? Is that a doable thing?
Yeah, I don't know the code on that stuff, but from reading all those studies of what burning stuff in our kitchen does to our lungs, I like to tell people, yeah, that they say you need to remain about 12 inches away from your induction cooktop and about 12 feet away from your gas cooktop. So I don't know.
Well, I know people cook on propane inside, just like they cook on natural gas, quote unquote, which are essentially very, very similar fuels.
Yeah.
And yeah, neither one are safe. So if you want to cook on propane, it's best to do it outside, but you can use a propane stove inside.
Well, I'm just wondering, can you put the bottle underneath the stove, or has it got to go outside?
I've seen people with, well, I don't know if it's legal or not, but I've definitely seen people just sit up with a canister and more or less a camp propane stove in a mansion. And that was how they had their cooking set up. I can't explain why. It impressed me at the time, but it seemed legal.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, we had a mobile home that had a propane tank outside, but space was precious too. So maybe that was it. So I don't know the code on where you can put a propane tank. I would imagine it's best outside. Propane is heavy gas. It sinks to the floor and stays there. It doesn't dissipate upward like methane. So it's a kind of a problem to have it stored in your house.
Right. The other question, Tom, was so I've got an electric car that I charge up about 20K miles a year or so at 4 miles per kilowatt hour. That's about 5 megawatts. And then total system is getting about 12.7 megawatts a year. When you say 4 additional panels, is that additional panels to what I have now, or that equipment is just going to use 4 panels?
Yeah, that equipment just would utilize the energy off of 4 panels. I don't know if you have them yet or want them in the future. So I don't know where your energy balance is now.
Okay. Well, thank you for the effort.
Sure.
So Gary, just while we're here, Gary cooks on a wok on his induction stove. I just want to show you, if you want, this is a purpose-built induction wok here. So there's the wok, and then here's the concave bowl that you put the wok into. And this is a scorching hot wok, but it is just for like 2 people. It's not like a big commercial wok. It's for home use.
I think there are some aspects of wok-based cooking where kind of the charring is helpful, but we found like a wok that would work with induction, so it is possible. I don't know whether it would meet everyone's standards of cooking quality though.
There are induction woks that go into countertops, like as a purpose build. I know David Kaneda, for instance, in 2011, he put an induction wok into his countertop that he's been using ever since. He likes that as an option.
The gas company was trying to use that issue to defeat decarbonization by saying they went to the San Gabriel Valley, got a whole bunch of chefs out there to say up in arms, "Oh my God, my wok, I can't use it anymore." This would be a great solution for that and shut down that argument.
Yeah, that's actually literally why I bought that wok, so I could engage that issue. And to be frank, there is and woks out there right now, commercial woks have as wide as an 11.5-inch coil, which means no matter how much heat they're putting out, it's still pretty much 11.5 inches wide. So large woks, like what's called a bow wok, as opposed to, I just showed you a POW wok, a little one, but a bow wok that are 22 inches wide, that really should have an 18-inch coil. And so I've just put in a grant recently to try to develop an 18-inch coil induction wok with a company in Brooklyn called Town that makes gas woks. So just so you know, that is the only product that's missing. Every other thing you can even imagine in a commercial restaurant exists, but there's just like, we only have 11-inch wide, really. Okay, so continuing on.
Well, it's on to you, Sean, now to do your case study or take any questions.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was great. And everyone else, I hope you contribute one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Carla Reinhardt's house. This is a cool old 1922 bungalow in Fullerton. It says, 2 adults, no children, both work from home. Next slide, please. So first thing to talk about is they have a 100 amp panel, but also an ambition to not only electrify their house, but to add a secondary dwelling unit house. Generally, that would trigger a service upgrade. Now that second house, not the home electrification. Hopefully we're going to avoid that. So here you can see this is a 100 amp panel on the right hand side, but it can hold 600 amps of loads. And it has a computer to balance and prioritize those loads. I mentioned before how a home that can have, I know someone who has 340 amps of stuff rated, like the plate on the back, 340 amps plugged into this span panel on a 100 amp service, which is the electrical line coming from the grid. So because their house really doesn't peak past like 30-40 amps when they've got all their stuff, and yet he's got 340 amps of circuits going into one of these. So he's like a SMUD engineer and he's having a bunch of fun, but that's to illustrate how a 100 amps is enough. It's enough for almost everything that you can think of and do. Except a code might require that you have a a 200 amp service for a second house. That might be something that you can't avoid even with technical strategies. I haven't explored that, if the span panel, if you added a second house, would do the job, but certainly one house with a gazillion different things. And Erica, right? You're here? Are you the Carla, pardon me, Carla, not Erica.
Carla,
Yeah.
I saw Carla earlier. Carla, hi.
Hey, Carla, you mentioned that you wanted to make a house that was separate. I was just going to put out there that if you add that house physically to your house, you might be able to avoid a service upgrade by calling it.
Yeah, it would be, we have a detached garage that's basically falling apart. So it would still be a detached unit, another garage with a studio on top. And the reason we want to do it that way is that we can't put solar panels on the house the way it's set up, but it would have better access to sunlight if we built it, the second house on the other side.
Okay, well, I think that when that happens, you're probably going to be triggered to add another service to that building or increase the size of service to your property and run that one off of a secondary panel. It's a little bit beyond me at the moment. That might be
and that's a long-term goal, but yeah, you'll get to the other goals too.
So in the meantime, because you have a 100 amp panel, I would encourage you to consider, this is one option, is you can add as much as you want. You don't have to worry about its power efficiency. You just plug it into a span panel. And I think these are $3,500. But a service upgrade is $3,500 to $18,000 and takes 2 months to 18 months. So this is a lot faster and about the same price if you want to plug a bunch of stuff in. Next slide, please. Okay, so your gas floor furnace. I love this picture. It's so cool. It's 100 years old and you're still using it. Oh, it's amazing.
No, yeah, it's still plugged in, but we don't use it. I'm afraid to use it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's definitely the kind of thing you should be worried about. I unfortunately, I read a lot of gas explosion news. I just have it on my Google search and it's just so sad. So goddamn sad. So
it's funny, the gas company will come out and inspect it and say everything's fine, but I still don't want to use it.
Yeah, well, yeah, the gas company likes to say things are safe until they blow up.
Exactly.
Because they're the gas company. Okay, on the right hand side, if this gas floor furnace was in a place that wasn't being walked on, you could look how there's 4 options, 4 different types of what's called fan coils to the right of this heat pump, which is in the middle there, that thing. That's essentially, a heat pump is a big fan. That's what's taking up all that space, is a big fan, and then tiny little coils filled with refrigerant fluid, and then that coil goes to, these are 4 different ways in which heat can be distributed. On the top, you have a wall mounted heat pump. In the second down, that's a ceiling mounted, like fan coil, pardon me. It's a coil with a fan on it, blows from the ceiling. But you can flip these things upside down if they're kind of tucked away over on the side, as opposed to this, which is probably like in a walkway or something. Because you can't walk on them. But you could have still using your floor registers if you had like a ducted system, hypothetically, which you don't. The next one down, that is true duct work. That you'd hook up like in a ceiling someplace and you blow air around to different registers, or down below your house and go either place. And then the last one that sits on the wall, kind of like the one that's on the top, but it's supposed to be at the floor height instead of sort of at head height or something. So what do you think, Carla? Would you like to have heat pumps or fan coils that sit on your wall or sort of up in your ceiling, or something that's completely hidden like ductwork, which costs a bunch of money? But do you have a thought?
I think probably the ductwork would be very difficult in the house right now. So yeah, we would probably settle for it being exposed.
All right, then the top one is the most efficient and also the least expensive to install. And they come in different colors if you want to be like green or blue, and you can paint them and you can put unicorn stickers all over them, or you can just ignore it and hang jackets around it and that kind of thing. Pete Marsh, I'd love for you to be on our case study list in a month or 2. Let's do it. Okay, so I think that you should consider those fan coils on the wall, the top ones, for your house. And you you can have just one, just like this gas furnace is just one place, but it's no fun. It's how I heat my own house. But I would prefer to have a fan coil in each room. But each room that you add a fan coil to is like $3,000. So it depends upon your budget. You're gonna spend like $5,000 to $7,000 to get the whole thing installed, and then every additional fan coil is like another $3,000. So that's how that kind of works. How do you feel about that, Carla?
No, that's awesome. So right now we don't have air conditioning. So
you get air conditioning.
Yeah, so it might be worth it at this point.
Seriously. One of the nice things about putting in a heat pump is that the cold climate ones, the ones that are designed to work in the wintertime, they are 40% or even 100%, like they use half as much energy as normal air conditioners. When they're running air conditioning during the summer, because they have a computer in them to make them work in the winter, they become awesome air conditioners in the summer. Way better than you'd ever have experienced before, because they use half as much energy or even less. It can be crazy low, a third as much energy for the very best ones. Okay, so you get air conditioning and a good one.
Nice.
On the left-hand side, this is your 29-gallon water heater, right?
Yeah.
Tiny, that's so cute. You got a 29-gallon tank, and you installed it in 2018. How is that closet there big or small? Like, is that tank a?
So it's actually on the outside of the house. So it's in one of those standard metal shed things so we can replace it as needed. It's nothing special.
All right, that's just the question is the door. On the right-hand side is what I was going to recommend, which is this is the 900-watt, 120-volt heat pump water heater. So this is something that won't require a service upgrade or even new wiring over to the spot. You just stick it right where that 29-gallon tank is. And I was saying, like, probably 40 gallons is as small as they sell them. So get a 40-gallon. And you are going to get fantastic service. We've been studying these things for years. I have one. They're just super efficient and you can plug them in anywhere. The only downside is that if you don't have electric resistance, in the wintertime, like around Christmas time, you won't have a whole lot of hot water, ability to make new hot water in the morning. Like, you'll take a shower or two and then you'll just have to wait. Because without electric resistance backup, which means you have to add a 240 volt line, which means you have to add potentially a service upgrade. Like, there could be real problems. But if you can just make peace with having a compressor that doesn't work below about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, that's how I heat the water in my house. I don't mind. Like,
yeah, I think that works in Southern California. My other question was, it used to always, for a while they were recommending tankless water heaters, and now I don't hear so much about them. I'm wondering why.
They're evil. Because, well, they leak a lot of methane gas. They are very leaky. And they were supposed to be like how gas got more efficient back when we were all talking about how I had never said this, but natural gas is supposed to be a bridge fuel. It's so much cleaner than blank. It's, and so they were saying, well, a tank of gas, that's like 60% efficient. If we have a wall hung one, that's 80% efficient. So everyone should go to these wall hung on demand, quote unquote, gas water heaters to save gas. And they pushed that for quite a while, about 20 years. And recently the state of California has completely given up on it. The Department of Energy's given up on it. Energy Star, like, they're not listing them anymore as their most efficient products. They're just like, we're done. You guys had 20 years to try to make gas better, and now we're all done with that. We're working on heat pumps only. So that's kind of why it's been just in the last 2 years that they're kicking those to the curb. So pardon, just to go back one sec, that water heater, you can get them at Pace for $2,000, the 900-watt, 120-volt. Just so you know, Pace is like a distributor that sells them. As Tom said, you can go to Home Depot, special order it. You can go to your plumber and say, I want this. And they'll say, where do I get it? And you say, go to Pace. They'll say, oh, I go to Pace all the time. Pardon me. I need to drink some water. Okay, next slide. You said you had a stackable, right? A gas dryer that's stacked.
Yeah, and I actually like the one you showed earlier, that LG model.
I love those. That's what I have. If you wanted to just use a condensing washer dryer, which is the world's most popular dryer, and Americans are weird. We dry like 90% of our laundry. Most people in the world, like the tops is 40% of laundry is dried in a machine. So everywhere else in the world, people use condensing washer dryers, and I love them. And if on the left-hand side here, that's a heat pump dryer, which is more efficient than a condensing dryer. It'll use maybe half as much energy, like a lot more efficient, because a condensing dryer is basically a glorified electric resistance dryer. It's a ventless electric resistance dryer, but that's what a condensing dryer is essentially electric resistance. A heat pump dryer over there on the left-hand side, that is using a heat pump to super chill a metal surface, and that super chilling of it makes the water weep out much more efficiently than a condensing dryer, which doesn't use a heat pump, and therefore the metal sheets that the water is dripping on are just room temperature, and it's not very efficient. So if you want to go efficient, you could go on the left-hand side, that's your stackable heat pump dryer. And on your right-hand side, and these are both 120 volt, so you don't have to rewire. And you wouldn't have to rewire with that condensing dryer either. So that's a third option. Yeah, but the one on the right, that's just electric resistance, 120 volt electric resistance. There you go. And since both of these are using the same amount of power, the one on the left, the heat pump will dry faster than the one on the right. But if you're up for that LG, it's the LG condensing washer dryer, 4.5 cubic feet. My brother has it. I have one. Steve Schmidt has one, and Lisa, they love it. Sierra Martinez over at the Energy Foundation has one. He loves it. A whole bunch of endorsements on that LG condensing washer dryer. Next slide. Make sure we get to, okay, now we're at questions. So if you would like to ask questions, like XUN, Jean, how do you say your name? Zun? I'm not sure if she's here. Oh, no, you are. Hi.
Hi, I'm back. Yeah, Shane.
Shane?
Oh, it's Jay. Yeah.
So Shane, that's your name, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. I'm Sean, so I was like, I'll make sure we got that. Okay. So you asked, can the heat pump water heater be located outside if there is no space available? No, it can't be exposed to rain. It has to be at least sheltered from rain because it has computer components in it, and that's just the rules for any kind of computer. But it can go into a closet that is, all it's doing is keeping the rain out. Just keep the rain out and you're fine. But some sort of, you know, on all sides, I'm not saying like just a little shelter, you really need to keep it protected from sideways rain and heavy wind and that kind of stuff, like a shelter, like a dog, you know, would get outside, just a little bit of something. And then anything needed for protection, yeah, just something from sideways wind. And all heat pump water heater has tank. Heat pump water heaters, some of them don't have tanks, but most of them do. Well, I'll take that back. All of them have tanks. Some of them have very small tanks. So if you didn't have space for a tank, then you could use the sand in that. I think that Greg showed. No, it was Gary, right? At the beginning, his case study, he showed a CO2 heat pump water heater that was outside, a big one.
Yeah.
Right? So that is something that produces enough hot water that you could take a shower continuously forever and it have no tank. But you'd only be able to take one shower forever. But that's how big of a heat pump compressor you'd need in order to get away with no tank. And you'd have to be very efficient in your use of water. But that's how.
Yep. Thank you.
So then I'm just looking at questions here on the side to start off with. And Shane, you also asked, do you typically see the utility bill rise after electrification? Yes, in California, no, in most of the country. On average in the United States, it's much less expensive to run your utility bills all electric with heat pumps. In California, it's kind of break even in apartments, and in homes, single family homes, it's generally more expensive unless you have solar power, in which you can have way less expensive bills cost effectively. So the question of, but there is a point, unless you have very inefficient gas devices, and then you might be break even, but you're probably going to spend a little bit more. And so, you know, the California Public Utilities Commission has been ordered by the legislation that they must create utility rates that favor electrification, because for about 20 years, on purpose, they've been favoring rates that promoted gas. That was in response to the 2000 energy crisis / Enron scam. They freaked out when we were having all those rolling blackouts, and they said all the policy making groups are going to push gas, and we're not going to do electrification, and that was true until 2017. So that's why our rates are disproportionately gas friendly, unlike the rest of the country, policy driven. And then Kate asked Tom, oh, and you said, yeah, Tom, does the combined washer dryer allow you to take out the clothes you want to hang dry before the dryer cycle? Yep. And you just like, you have to actually tell it to dry. So it's just a washing machine, or like an excellent washing machine. One thing to note about those condensing washer dryers is that they're an awesome washing machine, in part because they have to spin really fast. Okay, when you're drying laundry, all of the energy really is in evaporating the water. And that is about 90% of the energy of a washer and dryer load, is the drying of it. 90%. So the more water you extract by spinning laundry faster, the less dryer energy gets used. And so you can take it from like 90% to 70, and you can drive it down as you get faster spin cycles. So it turns out that the condensing washer dryer manufacturers know that, and they make these kick butt washing machines that do a terrific job of getting the water out. And then it's terrific for hang drying, just like they're really nice that way. Kate, you had your hand raised.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about induction ranges. I do want to do a whole house transformation, but currently my gas range is 20 years old, and I lost the oven. I have no oven because the control panel went out. So I'm trying to think, should I go ahead and just do that piece? And obviously, I don't have 240 right there. So I'm thinking, should I just go with a 120? And then I heard recently about, seems like there's possibly coming induction ranges that have a battery, but I don't know exactly like how much they're going to cost and how long it's going to take. And I can't find, like, there's one called Cabot. I can't remember what the brand was. And then there's one called Impulse. I was curious what you know about those and what you think. Like, should I just hold out and just use my toaster oven for now?
Okay, so yeah, Channing Copper, which is the name.
Channing Copper, that's what it was.
And they have a 4.2 kilowatt hour battery in it, which is made with lithium iron phosphate, so it's non-combustive. It's not the stuff that goes into cars. It's a heavier, bigger, slightly heavier, slightly bigger, and cannot catch on fire. And that raises the price from, say, $1,500 to $6,000. So if you want your stove to have a battery in it, and you can plug things into this, by the way, it has a 120 volt outlet, so you could charge your cell phones during a power outage or keep your refrigerator going. It has that. It's like a small Tesla battery. But when I asked them, Robert Benjamin, I asked them, and they said it was going to be $5,995, $6,000, right? So the Impulse one that's coming out, that has a 3 kilowatt hour, not 4.2, a 3 kilowatt hour battery. And I don't know how much that's going to cost. I haven't gotten a hold of them yet. But they are further behind in release of it. And the Channing Copper right now, if you wanted to get one, they're coming out in like March or April is when they'll actually show up at your door. What do you think, Kate? You want to spend $6,000? Got it?
I mean, I like the idea of getting a battery anyway. So if this is enough battery for the house, then maybe I've done it. But on the other hand, maybe I just want to do my whole house and do a 240 and, just do it right. I don't know. What's the difference between just a regular 120 and a 240 in terms of performance?
Well, the reason they put a battery in is not actually for your resiliency, but it's so that they could allow you to blast it, use as much power as you wanted on the stove. So we studied 40 apartments for a year, and this is up to 6 occupants. And we could tell that if we just studied the month, we honed in on Thanksgiving to Christmas, which is the big cooking season. So we found that 1800 watts, the amount that you take out of just a normal blender, 1800 watts when it's on high, the max you can get out of a kitchen circuit, that is enough for about 95% of the cooking. But it's not enough for 100% for everybody. So that's what happens if you don't have a battery, is that, and Blomberg is coming out in a whole year with a 120 volt, 1800 watt, no battery, $1,500 induction and electric resistance. So 2 electric resistance burners, 1 induction is their thinking. Anyway, that'll be $1,500, no battery, but it will not be, it's not a 6-person household on Thanksgiving, you get everything you want kind of stove. There's 3 burners and an oven.
2 people.
2 people is more than enough. It's super duper more than enough.
So I don't even need a 240 now. I can just get a 120.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually heating my office with one of my many 120 volt stoves that I've bought, ovens, because they're so cheap and easy, and I've been testing them to see which ones I like. So Oster, go get the Oster. Just so you know, it's a double louvered door. It's a terrific countertop oven that you can cook almost.
Oh, no. I'm talking about just replacing my entire range and induction range and yeah, just that, like replace my current gas range.
Yeah, clear. Are you talking about the stove? I call the range, and the oven is called a stove in my head. Is that what you're
So I thought it was the other way around. I thought the stove was the top and the oven was the bottom and the whole thing is the range. I'm talking about the whole thing. Sorry.
Okay, the whole thing. We're in agreement. The whole thing. Then go get the whole thing. If you want, and that should cost you like $1,500 to $2,500. And my personal favorite is the KitchenAid. Just so you know.
The KitchenAid what?
Well, KitchenAid I think has an isolated factory. Some factories make multiple brands, and they're like more dedicated to quality. And KitchenAid, there's multiple models that they have. I would recommend a single oven, because people who get the double oven find that that's a ridiculous amount of oven. So just a single oven, 4-burner on top, KitchenAid is a good quality.
And I can get that 120 volt.
Samsung is great. LG is awesome. Just putting it out there. I got a KitchenAid for my mom, and it's worked out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Leslie, you had a question in hand, and then I'll do it to Linda Kramer. Leslie, you want to...
Yeah, I just wanted to say that KitchenAid is manufactured by Whirlpool.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. And I just bought, I came in kind of late on the conversation because I was feeding my face, but I just bought the Whirlpool 24-inch wide convection oven, and it was marked off about $400 right after Thanksgiving. So a lot of those appliances are on sale right now. And the other thing too is if you buy appliances from IKEA, they come with a 5-year warranty on them, and most of them are rebranded Whirlpools.
Yeah, and I want to confirm, I just checked on this, you're absolutely right. Whirlpool has owned KitchenAid since 1986, and I'd stand by it. It's still like my favorite one.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, heads up.
No, it's good. So Linda, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mentioned this last time, but it's still a problem. It's coming up. So we are slow crawling in Orange County to get a city to have electric ordinances, right? And even just climate action plans. And so I've been problem solving and trying to figure out how do we reduce roadblocks. And it has come up more than once that this multifamily unit electrified, and now their prices are all more expensive. They're all paying more for their electricity. And that is just that is killing, it's causing all this stuff. So what would you recommend? Because I am now saying, well, what's our next step? Do we approach this unit and find out what happened, or recommend solutions? And if it's low income?
Well, okay, so rates, particularly for low consumers, rates have gone up almost 100% in California in the last 4 years, since 2019. So they said for average users, it would go up about 40%. What they didn't say is that for low consumers, efficient households or households with solar bills, like solar, either of those, and low income households are the lowest consuming households. Put aside any biases or stereotypes you ever thought, the facts are that 90% of low income households are either low or low moderate consumers, and only like 8% of them are high consumers. So when the CPUC has been approving rate increases willy-nilly for all the utilities and then telling the public it's only a 40% increase over 4 years, turns out that gas and electricity, to be clear, have gone up almost 100% in 4 years on low-income households, low consuming, low income.
Okay.
So it sucks, and the only way out is solar arrays. You cannot efficiency your way out of this kind of bill increase, because you can only get maybe 10 to 20% efficiency. Like 10 to 20% is about the most you can do on most residences in reducing energy. Yes, you can do more, but the vast majority is in that category, and only solar gets you down to like 80, 90, 100% reduction of your energy in the minimum monthly utility bills. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
We have the highest, San Diego has the highest electricity prices in the country, including Hawaii now. And that is because it's a gas electric utility, and they're owned by the gas company, SoCal Gas. And as a consequence, they have been on purpose, no holds barred, lowering gas prices while raising electricity prices to try to stop the movement that we're in. This is known. This is not like I'm being a conspiracy theorist here. It's like fact. So yeah, only solar arrays really get you out.
Okay, thank you.
Or move out of California.
Maybe we should also put a link in the chat about Save Solar, because that's in front of the California Public Utility Commission right now. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about it, Sean or Pete.
Yeah,
what's going on?
On the 15th this month, it'll be the third time the Public Utilities Commission has tried to raise the cost of having solar. They use the argument that it's supposed to help low-income households, and they omit a lot in order to make that argument. One of which is the societal cost test, to say how much does air pollution cost people and their health bills. There's an official test, but they won't apply that to the question. But more generally, it's just really clear that solar arrays are the only way to get low utility bills in this state. And if they raise bills 40% in 4 years, there's no way that you could lower your consumption by 40%. They are raising your bills. And like I said, solar's the only trick out. So on the 15th, the CPUC, this will be the third time, hopefully, that activists like ourselves have beaten them back, just the utilities. Yeah, thank you, Tristan, for putting that in.
It really does make a difference, because it has every time the proposal has, shaved off the really just awful things that are going to, stop solar from expanding in California. And that's something that, we're kind of a beacon for so many states of how we've made it work.
I really feel like we need a legislative solution, because the utilities own the CPUC. That is as recently as 2015, the president of the CPUC was caught taking bribes, and there were at least 147 examples of it in his email accounts going back to 2009. And it's like, it's so naughty. And I asked the staff, I showed them all the newspaper articles about him being found and corrupt, and hot tubs with naked women and wine that PG&E was providing, like that awful. And I said, did the CPUC reform itself? Did you guys do anything after all the scandals? And they said, no. No,
well, it was beaten down legislatively, and then they went around it to the California Public Utility Commission.
Okay, well, we should go back.
Go back to questions, please.
People's homes.
But just take a minute to, if you want to show your voice. You have to do it over and over again, unfortunately, but it does make a difference.
Could I suggest we take a picture before people leave?
All right, everybody put their cameras on. Linda, are you taking it?
Are you taking it?
I can.
Okay. All right.
Happy holidays.
And Sean, maybe we want to talk a little bit about your fireplace before we go.
Okay.
Let's do it on 3. 1, 2, 3.
All right, there's one, but we have so many people that I need to
a few pages. Right.
All
And
right.
just a reminder
I-
as we start to wind down here, if you want to save the chat, there's also, there's so much good information, questions and links in the chat in these meetings. So you know how to do that, right? Just go down to the lower right of the chat, click on the 3 dots and click save chat. And then that will save the chat to your computer. So make sure you do that and you'll have access to some of the questions and answers that were brought up tonight.
That's fantastic. And we will be sending out a follow-up email with the link to the recording and a couple of other, like Sean's retrofit guide and a couple other things.
Great.
Kathy, I didn't see your fantastic Santa hat. It's good to see you back here. Fantastic. Anybody have any more questions? Sean, any more questions in the chat? Oh, somebody messaged me. When is the IRA rebate for electrification of appliances effective?
Okay, so there are tax credits and there are rebates. Tax credits are effective immediately. So if you are using tax credits and pursuing electrification, solar, batteries, go for it today. If you are using rebates, which are only available to households up to 150% of the area median income, so it's for low, moderate income households. And if you are in the 0 to 80%, you can get 100% of your electrification paid for if it's under about $14,000. And if you are 80% to 150% of area median income, and this is sort of Senator Manchin's work, he was making it be income qualified, so he didn't want any scandals with wealthy people getting the benefits. Okay, so if you're up to 150% AMI, they pay 50% of that $14,000. Or differently put, if you had a $28,000 expense, they would pay up to 14 grand. They'll pay 50%. But it's in one way or another, there's no more than about $14,000 available per house. So
and is that 2023?
that is at the end of 2023. So there's a few different organizations that have responsibility for the rebates. First, the Department of Energy comes out with their guidance, and they put out a request for proposals. And then each state puts in a proposal for how they will spend this money in compliance with the law. And then the money gets distributed to that state, and then they start using it. And the rebates are weird because they're called a point of sale. So you, for instance, might bring in your like your food stamps or your some sort of proof that you're a low-income household. Okay, and then you'd go to like the plumbing house and they would give you a 50% off. Like, no one knows how to do this yet, is what I'm trying to say. Like, how are we going to income qualify individuals when they come to buy something? But it's more likely that it's going to be affordable housing developers that get a big chunk because they'll be able to easily income qualify. People who have first-time home buyer loans, people who in some way have interacted with the government to demonstrate their income, low-income seniors, who are on like Medicaid and some income qualification measures. It's being formed right now, to be honest, because it was obviously done pretty quickly as a law was created kind of quickly. For better or worse, not quickly, but seemingly hastily. Yeah, so at the end of the year, but the tax credits are now. And if you're interested in the stove,
yes.
So this is, these are fake, right? These are just fiberglass logs. And then in here, this is the water vessel. It's a liter of water. And this liter of water has a little like pressure activated dripper. And so I put it in and it kind of clicks in. And then it slowly drips water down to where there's an ultrasound. An ultrasound, which I can't hear because it's ultrasound, creates this water vapor. And there's 4 halogen light bulbs. So actually it's a tiny bit warm, just a tiny bit, like kind of warm and moist. And then here, this is a plug for the electric heater, which I didn't buy it. I didn't really want it because I had so many extra electric devices floating around. It's just like, that's more stuff that I need. But this is designed to come with like a custom fitted electric heater. And so it's called the Optimist. And I'll put this in the chat because it's got a Y in it. So MYST, the mist, Optimist. Optimist is made by Dimplex, and Dimplex makes lots and lots of different kinds of electric stoves. So you want the Optimist. And then also a Firewater. A Firewater makes their own products, a Firewater, and those ones are kick-ass. They're expensive, or they're more expensive, but they're beautiful. So Dimplex, they come with one color. A Firewater comes with all colors, and you can have a remote control, so it can be like a rainbow. It can be like Hogwarts, where all sorts of different colors come out of the flames, or it can be like Pride Parade, or the Green Bay Packers win, or like, you know, you can just do whatever you want. So the colors that a Firewater has are more, and they kind of go into commercial businesses a lot. Bars will like them for their sort of entertainment value. But anyway, it's a heater, it's a fireplace, you can touch it, you can put it, I live in a tiny house. This is my tiny office, and I live in a tiny house. And so I put this on the table, my 3 kids come around, I got the presents all around it with a tiny Christmas tree, and it's very cute and festive. So
Absolutely.
this is part of the fireplace.
Yeah, Carla was saying she wants that added to her case study.
Right.
Yeah.
A fireplace and chestnuts roasting on them is a nice place to put a bookmark on us, and to reconvene in the new year. So this is great. Thank you all for.
This was our biggest show, you guys.
So
Really?
big.
5
Thank
people.
you. Thank you, Sean
Nice.
and Tom, for your expertise and for chiming in, and for everybody. This is a great conversation. So thank you all for
Yes.
joining tonight.
And spread the word. We want people to feel like they have a place to come to solve their electrification problems. So
We keep adding once a month to the shows, and we'll get you that information. So thank you all for joining us. My dog is very hungry right now. So.
thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Keep in touch. Have a merry
care.
holiday, and we'll
Give
see you
people
in the new
induction
year.
ranges.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
like the
Thanks,
best
Sean.
gift.
Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Take care.